Welcome back. Welcome to the second week of Easter, and welcome back into some conversation about how we can find the power and the presence of God with us in this Easter. And often as I invite you into these conversations, you get to know a little bit more about me, and we get to know a lot more about God. And one of the things that you may not know is that I have epilepsy. I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was a senior in high school. I remember distinctly that season in my life, not only the summer before my senior year when I was diagnosed, but I was at a statewide leadership camp right before school started with high school seniors from across the state of Louisiana. I remember it was a time of great excitement. I remember I was meeting people from all over the state, and it felt like there were a lot of eyes on me in that week, and I had a seizure, and I was deeply embarrassed. And I remember the day that I had a seizure, I felt ashamed. And I remember even more distinctly the next day as I had to walk into the state capitol of Louisiana where the event was, and feeling like as I walked in that everyone was looking at me, and I felt ashamed. Now, thanks be to God, I haven't had a seizure since that time. But the memory hasn't left me. I remember walking in and just feeling like everyone was looking at my shame. I don't know if you've ever had an experience like that. These are personal, right? So with great reverence, may I ask if you've ever had a moment where maybe just the circumstances of life were such that you had to look at people who maybe your perception was they were seeing you in your shame. If we can imagine what that feels like for us, we can only imagine what it felt like in the upper room. In the second week of Easter, as the story of Easter unfolds, we are introduced to the first time that Jesus publicly reveals himself to all of his apostles. And they're in the upper room. John chapter 20 says that the doors were locked, not only for fear of the Jews were the physical doors locked, but I wonder if that's an image of their hearts, the doors of their hearts being locked. Just imagine what it's like for the apostles to be in the upper room. What's it like for Peter to be in the upper room? Peter knows that Jesus is risen. He knows the tomb is empty, but he hasn't seen the risen Lord yet. He must have been carrying a lot of shame in his heart, right? The last time that Jesus saw Peter, the last time that Peter heard that voice was the night before he died. And before the garden, at the Last Supper, Jesus looks Peter in the eye and predicts that he would deny him 3 times. Peter says, "No, I'll never deny you." And yet within hours, Peter is at that charcoal fire and says, "I don't even know the man." Gospel of John says that he wept after. And in the upper room, Peter knows he's got to have to look at the risen Lord. Just imagine the shame that's in his heart. James is there. James is one of Jesus' relatives. Let's imagine this, that you're one of Jesus' relatives, like he's a cousin, he's a kinsman. That means that James would have kind of grown up with Jesus in some way. He would have been familiar not only with Jesus, but also with Mary, right? And James fled in the garden. He ran. And now you're in the upper room, and one of your cousins, Mary, is there. Just kind of sitting in your shame because you just ran. All the other apostles, they ran, right? And the only one who made it was John. He's there in the upper room. And we can only imagine that they're in the upper room and they're all just ashamed, comparing themselves to John, struggling to look at Mary. And here comes Jesus, right? The risen Lord. He passes through the locked doors. And notice in the Gospel of John, chapter 20, that Jesus says, "Peace be with you." He says it again right after that. He says, "Peace be with you." Why? Why does Jesus say that? And why does he repeat himself? Because Jesus knows that those men were ashamed. So he looks at him and he says, "Peace be with you." And then right after that, as they're kind of catching their breath, he says, "Hey, peace be with you." Right? The beauty of Jesus passing through the locked doors and opening up the locked doors of their heart. And we can only imagine that as Jesus is saying, "Peace be with you," and he's looking at each of them in the eye, that Peter hears those words and it's personal to him. And James hears those words and it's personal to him. Right? Jesus, nothing more personal than shame. And as Jesus' words, right, bring peace into their shame, it transforms their hearts in the upper room into a place of restored glory. And I love the way that Jesus comes back for Thomas, right? Thomas, who once said in John 11 that he would die for Jesus, right? He's doubting. He says, I'm not going to believe unless I see him. Notice how personal Jesus is with Thomas. He comes back, right? And notice how personal the encounter is, right? He enters into his doubt. This Easter season, it's personal, especially as Jesus enters into the upper room with words of peace, which pierces their shame. And at some point, the apostles had to allow those words into their hearts. And if Easter is going to be personal for us, then the invitation is for us to invite God in, to allow him into our hearts, into every aspect of our heart. And throughout this Easter season, as you and I walk together, we will pray together, one day at a time, inviting God into our hearts. There's a great saint, Charles de Foucauld, who has a beautiful prayer. And I invite you just to pray it with me. You can pray it today. You can pray it every day this week. And every day as we get more familiar with the words and they rise deeper into our hearts, let the prayer of abandonment, let the prayer of invitation be a prayer that opens our hearts to the risen Lord. Father, I abandon myself into your hands. Do with me what you will. Whatever you may do, I thank you. I am ready for all. I accept all. Let only your will be done in me. And in all your creatures, I wish no more than this, O Lord. Into your hands I commend my soul. I offer it to you with all the love of my heart, for I love you, Lord. And I so need to give myself, to surrender myself into your hands without reserve and with boundless confidence. You are my Father. May that prayer be a prayer that we pray every day to invite the Lord into our hearts, especially any place that's locked in our own hearts, so that just as Jesus spoke peace to them, he can speak peace to us and transform our lives this Easter just as he did with them. God bless you.